Penguin Random House Audio presents Critical Role, Bells Hells, What Doesn't Break, by Cassandra Khaw and Critical Role. Read for you by Robbie Daymond, with Laura Bailey, Gray Delisle, and Marisha Ray. For Everett. Act 1. Once there was a farm girl who was meant for great things, although she would not know it for a very long time. She was not a very beautiful girl. Her skin was not fair, her voice was not sweet, and her hair was the color of an old grackel's wing. The farm girl was kind, however. She was dutiful and diligent, too. She was the last to leave the fields each day, but always the first to arrive. For this, her parents were grateful. A bride didn't need to be beautiful if she could be depended on, and the farm girl was very dependable. For 18 years, she lived with her parents, happy in their cottage. She would have lived there until she was a very old woman, had it not been for the noblewoman who came looking to buy a son. "But why would you want to buy a son?" asked the girl's father, who dreamt sometimes of having so much food in the larder he could forget what famine was like. "Because I am old," said the noblewoman, although her hair was the black of night itself, "and because I have no children to give my riches to." "Would you buy a daughter instead?" asked the girl's mother, who dreamt sometimes of what it might be like to have gems dripping from her ears and gold at her neck. "A daughter," said the noblewoman. "Perhaps." And so the farm girl was brought to the noblewoman, who looked at her like something long lost and then found. "Will you be my daughter?" asked the noblewoman. "But I have parents already," said the farm girl. "They told me I could buy you, my darling girl, and make you my own. But I will not claim you unless you give yourself away." The farm girl, who dreamt often of being a bride, of having a husband wealthy and kind, of having enough money to promise her mother jewels and her father a future where food was as plentiful as her love, asked the noblewoman, "What will you give my parents if I let you take me away?" "What do you think your price should be?" said the noblewoman. "What they deserve," said the farm girl. "What they want and more." "Oh, we can do that," said the noblewoman. And so the noblewoman bade the farm girl to wait outside the home in which the farm girl was born, and the home in which the farm girl thought she would die. In the dark stood a carriage of blanched white oak and 2 pale horses with eyes like smoke. Because she was dutiful, the farm girl did as she was told. Because she was young, the farm girl asked no questions when the noblewoman emerged an hour later, silent, smiling, satisfied. The two rode away then, daughter and mother. Neither spoke about what was left behind, not the farm girl's life, nor the house growing cold, nor the bodies there, one drowned in bright metals, the other in stew. Prologue. At 20, Matilda Bradbury still felt like a child. This was a problem. When she had been a young girl, her mother had assured her that life paralleled the year's seasons, that each person would live a tumultuous spring, then a calmer summer, then an autumn rich in the harvests of all the good deeds sown, before finally a winter of perfect sagaciousness, where there would be grandchildren and long naps and petitioners coming from far and wide, asking for the wisdom gathered from those warmer times. For a while, that story brought Matilda comfort. Except she was increasingly convinced that whatever force had taught her body about womanhood had somehow forgotten to provide her heart and her mind the same tutelage. Matilda worried sometimes that she would never grow up, that she would spend the rest of her life play-acting at being an adult, her flesh aging while her soul remained this liminal half-thing, neither girl nor woman, but something more feral and excruciatingly itself. This all might have been easier if not for the fact Matilda had been told repeatedly that she was a prodigy, someone upon whom her family had hung their hopes. Not a day went by where Matilda wasn't aware of this weight, and what it would mean if she failed those expectations. The Bradburys weren't in particularly dire straits, it was true. Even in Whitestone, people were always in need of a skilled tanner or a taxidermist who could help preserve the memory of a beloved pet. Someone who knew the trick of coaxing the dead to hold life's luster for just a little longer, or at least for long enough. But the city's need for them was no protection against time. As Matilda grew older, her parents grew slower. They ached more on cold mornings, and lately her mother had begun to complain that Matilda's writing was too small, too cramped, too hard to read, even though it wasn't but a year ago when she praised her daughter's penmanship as beautifully legible. Winter was settling in Matilda's parents, chill and gray. Every year added another line to her father's brow and another strand of frost to her mother's dark hair. Though they insisted old age needn't be feared, Matilda worried for them and their comfort. Try as Matilda might, she found herself aphantasic when it came to picturing that life of gentle idle they had spoken so lovingly of, not unless their fortunes changed. Not unless Matilda did something. All of which to say, she was terrified. Matilda picked at the loose threads in her frayed blue shawl, ashamed by the sudden embarrassment that swept through her. This was her mother's favorite shawl, a relic from when Matilda's grandmother had been alive, maintained with zealous care, stitched over, tenderly mended, kept hidden save for those rare occasions, a wedding, a death, a joyous birth, that merited its appearance. And oh, how it blazed in Matilda's earliest memories. A tongue of blue flame curled around her mother's brown shoulders, bright as a piece of the noon sky. Never before had she been allowed to touch it, never mind wear it. When her mother draped the fabric over her, a gesture as portentous as a queen knighting a man, Matilda nearly wept with pride. That sense of belonging, of being wrapped in a love so ferocious nothing could ever touch her, not gods or callous nobles, kept Matilda's head held high throughout the carriage ride to Whitestone Castle, past its gates and its rows of stone-faced guards. But then she walked through its doors and Matilda stared again at the ends of her mother's gift, marveling at how shabby it looked against the pristine splendor of the castle's furnishings, the beautiful tapestries and abalone walls, how faded it appeared in the amber oil light, and how much worse the rest of her ensemble seemed in the same burnished luminance. She could have stomached all this, if not for the Briarwood's brittle kindness, which was as much pity as it was anything else. They gave her a tunic that was a richer blue than her shawl, than any fabric she'd ever seen, its hue nearly iridescent, like the sea jeweled by a noon sun. Leathers like her father would weep to make. Belts, black leggings, white fur for her shoulders, all of which, Delisle gently said, were better fitting for the occasion. Matilda would have fled out of a servant's door then, but Dawnfather knew how the Briarwoods would react if her parents had to explain that their daughter had bolted like prey. No, she wouldn't put her parents through that, not for something as frivolous as her pride. And if she left now, if Matilda slunk home in shame, she would never know if Delisle might recognize Matilda as someone with potential, someone who could be trained, be honed into something of worth, someone who might even be an equal one day.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?